podcasts of Joe Walsh and Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So we discussed this piece at azcentral.com last week. This gentleman, Rashaad Thomas, who is a U.S. Air Force veteran turned poet and essayist, discussing a holiday party he attended at a restaurant in Phoenix. He sees a photograph on the wall of coal miners at a pub after work, a photograph. The coal miners have blackened faces, because they work in a coal mine. And he sees something very different than some of his friends do, who just see coal miners after work in a pub, and
that's what coal miners do after their shift. They'd go to a pub and have a shot and a beer. And
they didn't have time to shower, so their faces are still covered in soot. Yeah. He thought that the photograph should be taken down, and he had a discussion with the manager of the restaurant because he felt that it was consistent with people purposefully putting on blackface to denigrate black people.
And he wrote in his piece that it was a white restaurant owner.
Right. So we wanted to explore this with him a little bit, particularly, think about this against the backdrop, and this was written before Friday when this all bubbled over, but against the backdrop of the whole Ralph Northam controversy in Virginia. So we're pleased to be joined by, as I said, Rashaad Thomas, veteran of the Air Force, poet and essayist. His column, Phoenix Restaurant, says, "This is a photo of coal miners, but I see offensive blackface." Mr. Thomas, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Did I characterize the gist of your article fairly?
Yes. I think so. Yes, you did.
So you suggest in your piece that that based on what you see, the photograph should be taken down, even though you concede it's just coal miners. It's not like Ted Danson or Ralph Northam putting on blackface, and but you're still offended by it, so it should be taken down. Can you just develop that belief a little bit?
Yes. So, as an artist, there are 4 stages that I go through when I'm looking at a painting, a photograph of any sort of or medium. So I go through the description, the analysis, interpretation, and judgment. So what I did in this particular case was, as a person of color, look at this photograph, right? And I sit back, I look at it, how does it relate to me? Because we always bring our experiences, we always bring our reality to art. So through my experience, through my reality, I first saw in the photograph blackface. I looked at the faces first, the smile second, the woman in the corner in her white dress, the clothes, and then the beer mugs. So that's how my mind worked the first time I looked at the photograph. So what I wanted to do, because AZ Central is trying to have a diversity and equity column, bringing out having different community writers write from their perspective. So what I did was write from my own perspective at first glance, because in many cases, when you're in a class or you're having, when you're looking at a photograph with your friends, what's your first response? So that was my first response. So my first response is what I wrote about.
Well, so why should your perspective on it be dispositive of the issue as to whether or not the photograph stays up?
It wasn't. I was using the logic as a person of color first. So from using that logic, I would, at the end, say, oh, this is blackface. This should be taken down. Why? Because it means to other people. That's my take on it as a person of color and an artist. It wasn't. I never asked the owner to take it down. I actually asked the owner what did he see, because he was a white person. So how do our views contrast? It was basically a conversation, and I was
But
you see to the
in
you
his
see
view and other people's view, which I think he did say that my friends first said that they saw coal miners. One person saw blackface, another person saw coal miners.
But you did write. I think the photograph should be taken down.
Yes, because using the logic from the beginning as an artist of color, that was my first response. That wasn't my only response. As we've seen, or through the article, there was multiple perspectives. How do we explore multiple perspectives and also come to this discussion about identity, maybe other social constructions like race, class, because I know that a number of folks brought up the point that they were hardworking coal miners.
Right.
And I respect that. My
Okay.
father worked in the coal mine, in a cave as a military veteran. They say that the toxins that were in that cave contributed to his death about 15 years ago. So there is a relationship in the conversation, but again, there's multiple perspectives, and I can't deny my first reaction. I can only share it and then explore how we or whoever is looking at the photograph can relate or have this relation. How do we have this relationship with this piece?
But do you realize now that these are hardworking coal miners? And some, if you look to the left of the photograph, there's two gentlemen there that probably decided to clean up before going out to the pub, where others didn't because maybe they just didn't want to. Maybe they just wanted to, get that shot and a beer and hang out with friends.
Yes. So I did the research after. I think most people didn't think I did the research. I just wrote this piece and said, oh, this is how I see it. I think it's taken down. It actually is coal miners after work, having a beer, tending the strike of 1912 for better wages. Totally understand the research. There isn't very much, but that was the overall consensus in regards to this photograph. But we also have to consider during that time period, which there is controversy around the parades that they have in the UK around Mother's Day or Darky Day. Does that have anything to do with the photograph? Those are questions that we're allowed to ask because we don't have. It's just our interpretation. It doesn't mean it, but there's a question. It's not the conclusion, and that's where in my article it wasn't my conclusion. It was my first response. That was the logic in the piece that ended up saying, oh, a person of color like myself would end up with, I want it taken down because I'm offended.
Well, yeah, you write also, you frequently enter art galleries and you're not represented in the art, which leads to uneducated curation for exhibitions. Well, okay, so if I go to an exhibit of Frida Kahlo's work, I'm not represented in the art, so it should be taken down. I mean, you can see whatever you want in a painting or a sculpture, but the issue becomes where you're offended by something I'm not offended by, and for some reason that's not clear to me, your offense takes precedent to my non-offense in terms of whether that art stays posted or not.
You going to a Frida Kahlo exhibit is totally different from me going into a restaurant and seeing a photograph. You and I agree about the coal miners. There's no debate. There's no disagreement. Like I said, as a person of color, as the artist, seeing an art piece, I'm looking through the eyes of an artist. My first response was, this is how my logic ends. This is where it begins, this is how it ends. But that wasn't my only observation. The next stage was, I see coal miners, I see the research that I did, and that was it. That was the conclusion. But again, there are multiple perspectives. There's not only one. And I can have a conversation with anyone else and maybe have a different conclusion.
Well, but you had mentioned about putting a title card underneath a title card with an intention statement underneath the photograph. Do you still think that needs to be placed up in that restaurant?
this is how I look at it. I think we all what we are offered, what we know we can't unknow. So all the information given to the owner in this particular scenario, it was up to him. I gave three options. I think that many times we complained about something or was quote offended by something, but in the end we don't provide options, right? So me providing, okay, I may be offended because it looks like blackface. He can choose not to do anything about it. He's the owner of the restaurant. He can also choose, because I offered this idea, because I think education is very important, and I think where I work, we instill that in young people that their interpretation of work is not wrong. It is something that they will grow to improve according to any kind of formal education.
Okay,
so the card would be only, okay, this is what the coal miners do. This is what is in this photograph.
Okay, but
it would not have anything to do with blackface. It would not have anything to do with taking it down. It was just a suggestion with my logic that this would clarify the photograph and even maybe inspire people to even grow and do their own research according to that specific photograph or any other photograph.
Okay, I get the suggestion piece of it, and you see something different than somebody else might see. Okay, fine. But you also talk about the desire, your perspective that the photograph should be taken down. You say sacrificing one image for the greater good. The greater good is the standard of whether or not art is allowed, art is exhibited. Are you suggesting this just as a private citizen to private citizen discussion, or are you proposing this as something that should be imposed on a business owner or a gallery owner or an artist? That's, I guess, where I'm trying to understand if you're just having a disagreement about artistic interpretation and the way we should look at art, or you're suggesting that there should be some force brought to bear to make your perspective to hold the day, as it were.
I don't think we should impose our beliefs on anyone. I think whoever's willing to listen, whoever's willing to change their minds, regardless of who they are, their backgrounds, then I think that's where the conversation starts. I think that's where we don't say, oh, we may agree or disagree, but we're able to have this conversation and understand that we're listening and we're also willing to change. So, no, I wasn't saying I wanted to impose my beliefs.
Okay.
I was saying, like I said about the AZ Center of Diversity and Equity, this is a piece of art, and this is how I see it through my eyes.
So
and
if
go with that or not.
So if somebody,
I think is.
I get it. But so if somebody on a college campus saw that same photograph and had the same perspective you did, and went to the administration and says, take this down, or we're going to, boycott the school, we're going to protest at the student center, we're going to do something to demand that you take this down. In the same way that if a local regulator would come into that Phoenix restaurant and say, you have to take this down because it's offensive to black people, you would oppose that.
No, I think when we talk, in any of these scenarios, when we talk about blackface or anything that's offensive, we always go to freedom of speech. And when we honor that, then everybody's able to say and do what, according to their beliefs, when we're talking about these pieces of art, regardless of if it's on college or if it's in a restaurant. I think it's important to say that in college, we should encourage young people to question the world around them, regardless if the majority agree with them or not. That's how we improve our country, by saying your voice matters.
All right.
If you are don't be afraid to share your voice.
Okay.
Don't deny your voice, and just be strong and make sure you clarify or articulate what it is you want.
I appreciate that perspective. He is Rashaad Thomas. He's a veteran of the United States Air Force and now a poet and essayist. Mr. Thomas, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Let's